I'm Jon Paquette. I'm Senior Narrative Director at Insomniac Games.
And I'm Sam Lake, the Creative Director of Remedy.
Let's talk about Alan Wake 2 and Spider-Man 2.
Yes, congrats on shipping.
Congrats to you as well.
Game.
Yeah. You know what I like is that I think now the marketing lead times are shorter. It used to be like we would announce a game and 2 years out and then we'd talk about it for a long time. I think it's a little less now. I think there's so many more games out there.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. And it's better that way also. The game is kind of more in a form that you are actually making.
Exactly.
Like when it used to be like Max Payne or original Alan Wake, we were already doing a lot of press while we were still figuring it out. Or then you end up switching the direction.
Yep.
And then it ends up being like, we said this, but sorry.
I know.
Yeah.
How many E3s have you had where you've shown something that is not going to be in the game and you're like, okay, well, that's not going to work.
It's more condensed, but it's more intense.
Yeah.
But also like the closer you get to the end and the more you have done the introductions, the more fun it is to talk about it. Because early on it's like, it's these three things and we are not talking about these things. Then you're always like, okay, and needing to watch what you say more.
Yeah.
But at this point, when it's already out and you can talk about everything related to it, it's more fun also to talk about it.
Yeah,
way.
I agree. Are you at the point now where you can do spoiler interviews?
Yes, some. Like still being mindful, it's only a month.
Yeah.
So knowing that there are probably plenty of people who want to play, who have not played, and I would hate to spoil some things.
Yep.
Although these days, it is kind of like if you are online, if you're reading everything, you will be spoiled day one.
Yeah.
So it's also part like need to be careful, but at the same time, ultimately, it's everybody's own responsibility. Like, not to look if you don't want to be spoiled.
Yeah. When you were doing your marketing, did you have a say in like, hey, we're gonna put this narrative out there about what the game is because I wanna set some expectations for the player that we might twist and turn. So basically, doing storytelling in the media. Did you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's carefully like we spend quite a bit of time discussing how do we go into this. There are so many different aspects in a big game.
Yeah.
What do we want to start with? And kind of like planning the campaign and planning the beats on showing this and focusing on this.
So. We did a lot of that too. Like we knew that one of the big questions for us was going to be who is Venom, right?
Yes, yeah,
and
for
and
sure.
there was a lot of fans online were like, oh, it's got to be this person, it's got to be this person. So we were aware that was going to be a narrative that I think people wanted to talk about. So we, with a lot of our trailers, we kind of played into that. We were like, we didn't want to reveal too much, but we wanted to tease it enough so that people could kind of get a sense for who it might be. Right?
Yeah,
which is always fun.
Which is the mystery and speculation and all of that. Like that's so valuable.
Yeah.
And so much appreciated. The kind of the passion of the fans, like keeping the discussion going.
Yeah.
And making sure that you are helping with that.
Let me ask you a question about mystery. So, mystery versus suspense. How do you define that with your storytelling style?
It's a great question because it is really important.
Yeah.
Like and I love mystery. When I am a fan of something or engaged about something, I love that there is room for mystery.
Yep.
And that's a big reason because it excites me when I'm watching or playing or anything. I want that to be a part of the story and narrative in the games that I'm making. I feel that it's the balance of giving answers so that everybody is on board, but also posing enough questions. And even when giving answers, leaving room for interpretation.
Yeah.
Having planks in there and making it fragmented so that you are kind of like actively engaged in piecing the whole thing together.
Yeah.
And also on the level that you are, even if we know, because it's really, really important for us to know the answers.
Yep.
It can't be like whatever. Like there is a huge element of trust that you need to build and establish, because if the gamers are not trusting you that there is an answer, and it's not like, you know, it's gonna build into something that falls apart.
Yeah.
Or that said, I feel you don't ever need to give full conclusive one truth.
Yeah.
And even inside the fiction there can be kind of conflicting views, especially if it's a character's interpretation.
Yes. Yep.
Like you will never need to fully go, well, really it's about this.
Yeah.
Because we are in the point of view of the character.
Yeah.
And characters. So it's just leaving that, like somebody might be fully committed that this is the truth.
Right.
But leaving enough room for interpretation that somebody goes like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it's this. And somebody else comes in and says, no, but maybe you missed this bit.
Yeah.
And having people like engaged and thinking about it. Like that's such a crucial thing, that people can play the game through and they're still thinking about it.
Well, I think what Alan Wake did really well was it could have been confusing, right? There was a lot of things going on. But the gameplay, when you were in Saga's mind space with putting the stuff on the wall, the way that was written was beautiful because you would basically repeat the things that were happening, right? And I'm sure you did that on purpose, which was, again, really great because it helped me understand, you know, what was going on. When I switched back to gameplay, I was like, oh, okay, so that's who that is. That's where they're going. I get it. You know, I'm up on it. And if I ever got confused, I would go back to the mind place and I would, you know, look at things and figure it out. For Spider-Man, for us, I think we tend more toward the suspense, and I think it's a genre thing.
It is.
Yeah, it's a big time genre thing. Like I think our audience for the superhero stuff, they want to be with the characters.
Yes.
You know, they don't want to be like, you know, ahead of the characters, or I guess with suspense you can be ahead of the characters a little bit, but we want to know everything that's going on, and then when we put them in these really dramatic situations, we don't know.
Of it.
Yeah, we don't know what's going to happen, right? And I think that's what folks with the superhero stories, with Spider-Man particularly, I think they like that. We did a lot of UX testing, usability testing.
Yes, yeah.
And we would always bring people in and we would ask them, like after every mission, do you know who this character is? Do you know why they're doing what they're doing? What do you think is going to happen next? You know, we always ask these questions. And whenever they were too confused, we'd be like, okay, we screwed up. We got to go back and we got to fix some things. And it was really important. Like, I think people underestimate how hard comprehension is in a game.
Yes, yeah.
Because people will go off and play at their own pace, do things
yes.
at their own pace, and it's so easy to get confused.
Come back later.
Stop and come back a week later.
Yeah,
it's really hard. So comprehension was the one thing I remember saying to all the writers around Alpha. I was like, our goal is not perfection. We're not going to get a perfect story here. Comprehension is our goal. If the players can understand who these characters are and why they're doing what they're doing, then we succeeded. We will polish that once we get comprehension.
You know, if you think about writing for different mediums, that I feel that's actually one clear thing that is unique to video games compared to other mediums.
Yeah.
Because the player is driving it and pacing it in some ways and pacing their own engagement.
Yeah, we consume it in a completely different way.
And it's hard to predict where everybody is, and just making sure that the key points of information are there,
Yeah.
and repeat it in a ways that doesn't feel like it's being repeated to you
Yep.
if you are already knowing it, but still repeat it to you.
And there's an art to that.
Yes.
Like with TV series, you know, you'll watch a lot of TV series, and especially those that are like on Netflix or whatever. If it's a series, on the next episode, they'll play a recap of the one
Yes.
before,
Yeah.
right?
Previously on.
We don't do that in games. If you go away and go do your dishes, or you know, come back like weeks later or whatever, maybe you had a lot of dishes, and you come back, we don't play a previously on. You know,
Yeah.
we could, I guess, if we detected you were away for this amount of time, we could do it. But I guess we allow the player to get back into the story the way they want to get back into it.
Yeah.
But there's problems with that, you know.
And
It's hard.
It's quite a lot of work. Like way back when, Alan Wake 1, we actually had previously on.
Yeah.
Because it was very TV episode-like, but it was also very linear.
Yeah.
So it was easy
Yep.
to do a previously on episodic basis. Here, like with two characters in two worlds, you can progress as you choose, and a lot more complexity. It would be a huge effort to actually create a dynamic, smooth, previously on experience
Yeah.
out of it. And we did consider and ultimately said that, yeah, no, like we have other methods like
Yep.
the plot board and the case board
Yep.
on both characters to help you with it.
Yeah. Speaking of complexity, when you start out like in pre-production on
Yep.
a story, what is one of the first things that you do to kind of get a sense for the story from beginning to end? How do you approach that?
There is work before getting to that,
Yeah.
which usually is then just like figuring out the genre of the game.
Yep.
Who the character is, the main character, the setting, all of these things that are needed for team communication and understanding what are we starting to make, and then getting to the story.
Yeah.
I don't know, like I'm pretty basic and old-fashioned in like I love working on a big whiteboard.
Yep.
And what I tend to do, what I did for this and what I did for Control is that I have 3 helper structures: the 3-act structure, the hero's journey, 5 or 7 stages of grief.
Yep.
I just mapped them like all on the top of the whiteboard.
Yeah.
And they are not any kind of a straitjacket. They are just for me when I feel that I'm now slightly lost or not getting the right kind of ideas. I can always like glance up and check that, okay, yeah, something like this. So it's just a helper.
I'm exactly the same. I'm a structure nerd, so
Yeah.
I love having that at the start. Like I do the same thing. When we were in the office, we had a room with a huge whiteboard. It was a whiteboard wall, and at the beginning of
Crazy
Spider-Man,
wall.
Crazy wall, yeah. Beginning of Spider-Man 2, we had the whole story written out on the wall. Eventually, we went to like index cards that we put up there, but it's good to start with the marker because it's easy to erase and do different things. But then like you start, and I think getting that when you know how you're going to end, that's the hardest part. Like getting a good ending. But then for me, I like to go kind of back.
Yeah, many times.
Once the ending is there, and kind of get a sense for okay, what is the pacing of this experience? And I think another thing that maybe not a lot of people think about when they think about game writing is we also talk a lot about the gameplay. We talk a lot about what is the player experience.
I mean, it's back and forth. It's a conversation. It's very much all the different aspects of it, and then unfortunately, I guess some production realities and they just need to be taken into account and worked into it. So there is an added complication on top of just purely being in that writer's paradise of like thinking about cool story stuff. But yeah, like and these days it ends up being kind of like multiple layers. Like in Alan Wake 2, there was this whole thing for Saga, this whole thing for Alan Wake, certain elements that are kind of the third layer that is the like connection points planned into it. That's an intense phase that does take a lot of time. That to me then leads into first the synopsis, but I'm not satisfied. It doesn't have enough detail, and I then tend to like to write a proper treatment that can be anything from 30 pages to 50 pages on the detail level of like what is actually going on and happening.
You're speaking my language because that's exactly what I like. I like to do a detailed treatment. At some point after we look at the structure, and we have the team look at we call it the macro. We have the team look at, okay, this is how many missions we're planning to have. These are all the locations, all the characters, so we know kind of the scope of the experience. Then in the treatment, what I like to do is I like to say, okay, cinematic. This is going to be, a cutscene that we know is going to happen. When that one ends, the transition from that cutscene into gameplay is going to be like this. And then the gameplay, I want to describe the gameplay, what the gameplay is going to be, and then describe how we get into the next cinematic. Because there's a big difference between, what the story is and how we tell the story. And I think the treatment, at least for me, helps with, okay, how do we tell this story? And invariably for me, when I do a treatment, the cinematic team will look at it and they'll say, wow, that's a lot of cinematics.
I've heard that quite a few times.
And then we do the process of like, okay, how do we, get ourselves into budget? How do we, make the same story, but maybe in a different way? And I think that's another big difference between games as a medium and other mediums is as we're making it, we're making so many changes based on
iteration,
talking with people on the team and new ideas that come up. One of the things I've learned to sort of embrace as I've gotten older is it's okay if we change things. Because if we're changing it for a good reason.
And it can come from any direction, really. Like it could be a gameplay reason, it could be just a scope reason. Like, even if you are trying to stay on top of understanding the limitations on different departments and scope, it's pretty impossible, because things are changing as your engine changes and tools change and just, everything is moving so fast. That then there are all the experts that you are relying on, and if they come back and say we can't do this, and then
you ask 3 more times. Can we do it? Are you sure we can't do it?
So, but this is more important than these things.
And then you start bartering. You're like, okay, we'll cut this, but if we can keep this,
exactly. And I have learned that kind of the mental place where you need to be. Well, first of all, you need to bear the fact that things are not locked, and for some people it's harder and a lot more stressful. But I always say, okay, we need to change this. And we like this, but let's take this as an opportunity to make this better. And usually that's the way it can go. That you need to actually change it or even make it smaller. But if you are looking at it from the perspective of this is an opportunity. Now we are changing something and these things were already nagging to us in some way, even though we were saying that it goes. Now we can open these things around this up as well. Because it needs to change. And maybe this is an opportunity to tell the story better. Or find a new angle into it.
I think you're touching on something that is sort of a soft skill, which is talking to people on the team and helping everyone understand what it is we're trying to make. And I think that's something that is super important. We have, our creative director, Brian Entire, he's really good at it. The key is, I think, explaining the why. When the team understands why you want to change something, then they're more likely to A, get on board, but B, once they understand why you're changing it, they'll have a better view of what the project is. So they'll understand the direction a lot more. But those are always difficult conversations because, like you said, people are always asking, when are we locking? When are we locking?
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
And I feel bad every time when we've locked, and it's like, actually, I know that thing is locked, but we kind of need to change this thing. Is it okay if we unlock that?
Yeah.
And I just see, people deflate. On Spider-Man 2, I told you we did a lot of usability testing. We brought in a lot of people. And we had various endings. We had a few different endings throughout, which is always dangerous, but whatever. By having a different ending, I don't mean the whole ending change. Sure. It's like there's a few things at the end that were tweaked. Pretty late in production, around alpha actually, we had a narrative consultant, Kim Belair, who's really good.
She worked with us.
Did she?
Well. Yeah.
She's amazing, isn't she? So she played through the alpha build, and she said, "Are you sure you want this thing to happen? Because it kind of feels like the same thing as the last game."
Right.
And we were like, "Yeah, she's right." And then she pitched an idea that I promptly stole and we put into the game. And for me, it was one of those moments where a lot of things kind of clicked into place for the story. I don't think that the younger me would have been able to do that, the one with the big ego and who didn't listen to. One thing I've learned as I've gotten older is it's really important to listen to the audience and the people around you. And not all the time.
It's an interesting instinctive balancing act that like for it to go through and not fall apart. You still need to kind of like make sure that it stays together. And some ideas, even though you can see the excitement and coolness, you can see like, no, like it goes against this. And even if it would be lovely as an individual idea, you do need to always go through that process of thinking, like can I make this work?
Yeah, and one of the things I say is, what is the story telling us? What does the story want this to be? And if you look back on the story and you see that everything leads naturally to this outcome, then you're like, well, that's kind of what it has to be. And luckily Kim was able to find a way to do the third door, what's behind the third door, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, for us, thinking about changes along the way, and I love using live action elements in the game, and we were definitely doing that and working on it. But then at the same time, we were doing quite a bit of game cinematics, and we were struggling with just the scope of it. But everybody were really, really excited about the live action. So that there was a certain point of time where I said that, hold on, let's think this through, and maybe we could actually still on some of the cinematic content do a pivot, because this is working really, really nicely, and we have a problem here. And just embrace the dreaminess of it and bring more of this, which it was really kind of driven from the worry on the scope side and struggling with it. And maybe that would never, like, that's the beauty of it. Like because of a problem, you are forced to think of a solution. And if you would not have these limitations or obstacles, you would never necessarily consider something that feels like a bit crazy. But then when you do, it's suddenly like, oh my God, this is so much better, and now it works. That as a concrete thing, like it's partly as a kind of like us struggling with certain bits of producing enough scope, pivoting into that and having more of it, and like now looking back, like it was great.
So we both shipped a game this year. Have you been playing any other games?
Very little.
Me too. It's really hard.
Little. Yes.
It's really hard. But when we would bring people in for usability testing, there would be a questionnaire and they would all have to answer questions. And one of the questions that they answered was how many gaming hours do they have per week? And I remember like seeing that some of the folks that came in had like over 40 hours of gaming time a week. And I was like, That sounds amazing.
Yes.
you know, but it's so hard when you're making a game and trying to have a life to also make time for playing other games.
I'm still like having shipped it now a month ago and not quite recovered to normal level. I'm still in the fantasy of I have this amazing backlog of all kinds of cool film, books, games, and I'm gonna do all of that. And probably the reality is I won't have time to do all of that anyway.
Yeah.
But still in that kind of like, now there is time for all kinds of things.
I've been reading a lot more books, which is interesting because I like to read before I go to bed.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I wasn't doing that when we were making the game. I think it's just maybe
bandwidth.
Is it bandwidth?
I haven't even bounced back. I love reading.
Yeah.
And it's very, very important to me. I haven't gotten back to it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just like sleeping too little and trying it and then falling asleep.
Yeah.
And next evening going like, I don't even remember where I left off. And doing it again and then giving up. And really, really, that's one thing that I'm looking forward to, like rediscovering the joy of reading.
What are some of your favorite genres?
Well, I love mystery. I love postmodern like stuff that is bit of a game like in the sense of building something that you are kind of like I get really excited honestly in everything when I feel that maybe I'm not quite smart enough to understand what's going on. And like that really kind of like sparks my interest and gets me going. And now I want to kind of like, and even like I feel really satisfied often if I don't have the answers at the end.
Yeah.
That to me is like, I can keep on thinking about it.
Yeah.
And that to me, like say in film is something that I love with somebody like say David Lynch, because it's not meant to be understood exactly. There is that dream-like feel to it, and still feeling safe that it is as it's supposed to be, and it's not random in any way, and there is really, really clear thought behind it. But I'm not meant to have a crystal clear answer.
I'm a huge Stanley Kubrick fan.
Yes.
And that's what I love about a lot of his movies.
Yes.
Is that they make you feel
the
something.
Emotion.
Yes. Yeah. But he does it through images and through sound, and there's a way that sometimes film can do that and make you feel something that you didn't know was there. Like Eyes Wide Shut is one of those movies that some people don't like, but I love that movie because it's so unique. Just the feelings that you get as you're watching this crazy night. Make a great video game.
I mean,
for a very small number of people. Can you imagine if Kubrick was a game maker? There would not be a big audience.
Yeah, but it would take a long time because it would be perfect. Which is hard.
Yeah.
But like in experiences and in fiction as well, not quite knowing. I mean that to people are like us working on story a lot. When it's very formulaic, it's kind of boring because you can see where it's gonna go.
Yep.
And I like to be surprised.
Yeah.
I like to be there and I have no idea what's gonna happen now.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful, thrilling feeling.
Yeah.
The great feeling these days with a lot of content and streaming media and all is that there are a lot of opportunities where it's quite ambitious.
Yep.
And things like this is new, this is thrilling because I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
When it's a mix of new things, like Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah. I still haven't seen and I need to see it.
It's very much recommended. It blew my mind. It was so fresh.
Yeah.
It felt like, well, this is today now.
Yeah.
And this is like, it's wonderful, it's thrilling, and it's really surprising, and yet like it has the emotion and it has the heart and all.
I think surprise is one of those things that is the most important thing we can do for our audience.
Yes.
Is to get people having unexpected things.
And that can go to mystery or it can go to suspense.
And I just read a book that is not a mystery at all. It's by Jonathan Franzen. It's called Crossroads. And it's more of a family melodrama kind of thing. But I was so engrossed in it because I had no idea what was going to happen.
Yep.
And I was watching these characters do these things that were, I was like, oh, wow. And each chapter, each thing that each one of the characters did was surprising. And I just could not stop.
But that's something that sometimes happens when you are writing a story as well and drafting out the story. I mean, it's interesting to me because this is so much a teamwork and team effort, making a video game. You need to kind of communicate the theme relatively early on what the story is.
Yep.
But at least to me, when we go to a deeper, more detailed layer, writing the actual screenplay, even if you have it mapped out, there are surprises, like when you start writing an actual scene in the screenplay format, you go like, actually,
yes,
like this is what the character would do here.
Yeah.
And what we were saying on the treatment level wasn't quite like it was an idea, but now and sometimes they are even not contradictory. You can still kind of get to this more or less the same outcome.
Yep.
But how you get there, because what the characters end up like, no, this would be the line.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah.
You know why I think that happens is because when we're looking at the macro or the treatment or whatever, we're not really in the moment with the character.
Exactly.
And when we sit down and we look at a screenplay and we start writing the scene, that's where the work of writing is, because we're taking our mind, we're taking our everything, our body, everything, and we're putting it somewhere else, and we're acting.
Yeah,
essentially.
Exactly. Yes.
I said this recently. I was doing some press with two of our actors, Yuri Lowenthal and Laura Bailey, and I was saying, what you guys do isn't that different than what I do. I just do it alone in a dark room.
Yes.
know? But we have to put ourselves in the shoes of other characters and feel their emotions, think about what they're doing. Yes. And you're right. There's discoveries that happen when you're in the middle of a scene. You're like, this is not how that scene would go.
If there was a camera while you are writing, people would look at it and go like, this guy is insane.
Yeah.
Because you are like,
do you ever laugh to yourself when you have a, yeah.
Realizing that I was like,
yeah.
This is an angry, it's very deep on the, like, you need to find the emotion on.
Do you think that's a skill that we learn over time and get better at? Because I feel like, similar to actors, when actors have to go on set and all these people are looking at them, they have to let down their guard. They have to open their hearts, right? Yeah. And that's a skill that I think really good actors, they're good at it. Do you think writers also get better over time?
Exercising. I do think so, and I've always felt that there is this kind of like connection between writing and acting.
Yeah.
And this time around, like doing Alex Casey.
Yeah. Good job, by the way.
Well, thank you. I'm was feeling like a total amateur, but blessed because wonderful actors that I got to work with, and a lot of learnings for writing as well. I felt
like what?
Like having to be there, having to do it, like just like carrying an emotion, an arc in a scene, and realizing this is really hard for an actor, and maybe I should be more aware of that when I'm writing a scene.
Yeah.
So like felt that by having to do that, I was learning about directing and I was learning about writing. Yeah. And that to me was the biggest takeaway out of it. Like really, really wonderful lessons on being able to look at it now from a slightly different perspective as well. Also just understanding the technical side of it, the whole motion capture and then James McCaffrey, wonderful James McCaffrey, with his wonderful voice being the voice of Alex Casey, and me then being in a performance capture booth, lip syncing to his delivery and needing to, act it out. And just the complexity, still the complexity of the technical side of an actor performance that kind of make it harder for them.
Yeah.
Being very aware of all of those steps, having to go through them does help.
Yeah.
Like just understanding.
Totally.
For directing and writing it.
Yeah. I would think I would be a terrible actor, but I do think that being able to let your emotional guard down.
Yep.
It's kind of weird that we do that for a living, and we have, like, our work is supposed to be a professional environment, but a lot of times with our writing team, I'll get really personal and I'll say, look, we're not going to be able to get the emotions that we need unless you dig into yourself, and try to find the hard, juicy, tough stuff.
I feel that when you are in the process of it, it's relatively safe being alone in a room and going through that. Where the hard part comes is you are exposing that material to other people for comments and criticism. That because it is your emotion on the page now.
Yes.
And that's why it's hard. But doing it alone in a room while writing, that feels like it's a safe place. Nobody is seeing you. There is no camera. Like you just kind of like.
That's what I've gotten better over time with the whole feedback thing.
Yeah.
I think maybe I've been beaten into submission. I don't know what it is.
Well, you tend to grow a thick hide and be able to look for. There are individual opinions, and then there are trends of feedback, and now two people said the same thing in different words. There is something here that needs to be figured out.
Yeah, and it's often the note behind the note.
Yeah, right,
like
exactly.
They'll say they don't like this thing, but it's not really about that thing. It's
and often there comes a solution from them, and very rarely that's the solution.
Right.
But you need to just kind of think through it and find, like, what's the problem, actually.
Yeah, that's really great. Like, when we were polishing Spider-Man, all the writers would play the game together.
It's so important.
And we would make sure everybody speaks up when something bumps them. When we're in the middle of a play session, if there's a line of dialogue or even a shot on a cinematic that doesn't seem right to them, they need to speak up and say, okay, that bumped me because X, Y, Z. It makes it so much better when you have a team of folks that do open themselves up to each other.
Yeah.
But it's also weird, that you I don't know, maybe it's just me, but having like a second family, that you're really close emotionally with, because that's the job, right? Like, you have to be emotionally close to these people. And I think it's one of those human skills that is not natural. Like we're not meant to do that unless it's like with our family and we get to know them and live with them and that kind of thing. So I don't know. I guess I'm pontificating on the strangeness of doing what we do for a living.
And very often the very human natural response when you are being criticized is to go on defense.
Yeah.
And then you are kind of shut down and locked down and no. Like I'm stubbornly holding on to this.
Yeah.
Which doesn't help.
Right.
But that's the part where you need to learn
you start to feel that emotion and then you're like, what's the goal here?
Yeah.
The goal is to, I say, put things on the shelf, which may not be true anymore. Maybe we don't put a lot of things on the shelf as much as we used to. Put things in the download queue. I don't know. But our goal is to have a great game at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I think when we as creatives are able to suppress that initial emotion to push back, the thing at the end of the line will get better.
Yeah.
But sometimes we also need to be the ones to push for things.
Yes.
Because I think it's a tough balance on a big game where there's a lot of folks on the team that each have their individual job. And they need to get that individual job done. And they need to be able to be creative in that individual job.
But then still making sure that
Right.
yeah.
Right. And there's going to be a lot of people, like if you want to make a change to Act 3, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say that's not a good idea because X,
Yeah.
Y, and Z.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that kind of stress and pressure? Because you're the creative director and the lead writer. That's a big job.
We like just from the role perspective, and this was asked from me. Why are you not just doing it on your own? Not like I would be dead. It's to me, it's really, really important to find the right people to collaborate with.
Yeah.
And it's so valuable. I like co-directing this with Kyle Rowley and really with Janne Pulkkinen, who is our art director, because like the stylization was such an important thing that we were kind of a trio working closely together. But then also like, writing the story with Tyler Burton Smith and writing the screenplay with Clay Murphy and all the cinematics and live action. We had live action director Anssi Määttä collaborating with me. So finding the right partners.
Yep.
And then you have this kind of a balance, and it's a shared thing, and everybody can like that helps.
Yeah.
In itself, when you are kind of like finding yourself struggling or locked, there is always another person to kind of pick it up and carry it.
Yeah, we had a team that our project manager, she coined it VASE, VASE, which is, I think it's Vision and Strategy Execution. I don't know, it wasn't a great name, but what was great about it is that we would have a director from every department be in the meeting, and we would meet very often,
right?
Several times a week, and we would get together, and any problems that came up, we would talk about with the team, and it was a team of really creative, great people who would always help each other out.
Right. Yes.
Sometimes
and sometimes it's only to vent.
Yes.
Like
we did plenty of that.
Yes. But that's an important part of it, being able to do that and not just kind of like
Yeah. And I think it's important to have a group of people who can then be on the same page, and because there's so many people that it takes to make a big game like these two games.
Yeah.
That getting everybody on the same page it can't be one person's job.
No,
right?
No.
So having that group that meets regularly and talks about things and solves problems, and when there's a change, we all talk about what the change is going to be, and then communicating that out to the team. I feel like that on Spider-Man 2, that was one of the biggest learnings for me. I think this is the first time we've really sort of institutionalized that group where we would meet so often. I'm never making game another way again. Like we're always going to have that base team.
Which is a great feeling of finding something in the process that this works. Now this works, and now this feels right.
Yeah.
And like finding those steps is a really important thing. Just the idea of having two hero characters and two protagonists and two playable characters. They are there individually, but because they make the story together, they are also there is this funny thing that it's almost like the dynamic between the characters and how they live in this world and affect each other. That is as important as those characters on their own.
Yeah, it was a lot of learning for me with dual protagonists because when we were at that macro stage, right?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I know that this is going to be, I said from the beginning, this is going to be a Venom story. Like we want to do Insomniac's version of a Venom story, right? So Venom was really the character that was going to weave in and out of all the other characters, in the story and affect them, the symbiote early on and then Venom, later on, but it's really the same character. When we started doing that, it felt like, okay, maybe having this dual protagonist with Venom being the main thing, like my head was exploding, right? Like there was just too much going on. And not until some of the other writers, Lauren Mee in particular, what she did is she took Miles' character and she was like, all right, I'm gonna have his arc with Martin Lee be its own thing, and I'm gonna take some time to map that out and make sure that it's really great. And then we're gonna kind of put that back into the story. And
Yeah.
and I think having her spend that time making that arc its own thing
Right.
helped us to have it not just feel like, Miles was not participating in the story. But in the macro stage, it was always that, Miles and Pete and MJ are going to come back together, late in the story, right? But it was the early stuff that was difficult.
Yeah.
And then being able to switch at any point, when you're in the open world.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really tough. But also so freeing for the player.
Right.
And that's why I think
Yes.
we did it, right?
Yes.
Because the players love
Yeah.
to be able to do that
Exactly.
and play who they want to play as.
But it was really, really interesting from the perspective as well, because especially with suspense, like which also obviously part of Alan Wake, your instinct as a storytelling is when you are saying that, okay, I have 2 tracks here. So I lead the character into a cliffhanger, and that's the point to switch.
Right.
And suddenly giving player that freedom, you go like, okay, I don't have this tool in my toolbox anymore.
Yep.
But for sure you do, but it's on a single track, you can have a twist and then aftermath and going forward, but not between them.
Yeah.
And it takes a different kind of an approach, but in a very similar way. It's interesting to talk about this because I'm a lot of like echoes between them. Like I felt I had a really clear picture about Alan Wake's arc and where he is.
Yeah.
And Saga being a new character for us. That to me felt like, okay, there are some elements, but this is like a lot of thinking needs to be done.
Right.
And that to me felt like bringing in Tyler to collaborate with me on writing the story. Like that was, I remember early on when we were workshopping it, I just had a lot of questions like Saga arrives and then like the situation is something like this, but we need to figure this out.
Yeah.
So a lot of, and even going to screenplay then with Clay, a lot of thinking still went on, like how do we bring this? We want to bring them back together.
Yeah.
And how are we solving that? So yeah, like it's kind of the separate arcs, but then always like needing, that's the kind of the multiple layers of it. Like you have the arcs, but then you need to think about the whole.
Yeah, and an additional challenge we had is that we have an open world, right? Where you can switch between Miles and Pete.
Yes.
And so it's a strength and a challenge because the strength is, what we really want to say with this game is that you can be both Spider-Men. The city needs both Spider-Men,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
So we had some side content that was Miles only, was Pete only, and we wanted you to get a sense for, okay, when you're playing as Miles, the city is a little bit different. The people know you differently, whatever. Yeah. But it's so hard to get deep into that, without getting linear. But I think that's what players want. They want that freedom to be able to be who they want to be. But they also want that cinematic story.
Exactly. Yes. You need both. And I think that a mark of a successful project is also that you feel afterwards that a lot of learnings, which keeps it interesting.
It does.
And exciting.
It does, and it makes me scared to keep making more games because we got to learn new things each time. But I think that's another thing that's interesting about what we do is when we start a new game, we have to ask ourselves, what are we innovating? What are we changing from and getting better at from the last thing that we did? Yeah. We can't just make another story and ship the same kind of stuff that we did before. We got to innovate not only in the gameplay, but also in the way that we tell the story.
And hopefully not in everything at the same time.
Well, it starts there, right?
Yes.
Like you start, we're going to change this, we're going to change
exactly,
that.
Yes.
But that's another thing that we share is that we were both sequels in a franchise.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
So we built on, there were roots, right? That we could draw from.
That are very important because the audience, all the gamers are very invested.
Yeah.
Also, like you need to open it up for new audience, but at the same time, you need to make sure that those who have, committed already and are really, really wanting it to go on, you need to make sure that it does.
And I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have when we're making a Spider-Man game, is that Spider-Man is a character that's in so many mediums, right?
Yeah.
And there are fans in every medium who are diehard fans of, and we're going to disappoint them no matter what we do, right? But what we need to do is we need to say, okay, we're going to make Insomniac's version of this story.
Yeah, for sure.
And we're gonna do the best that we can and make sure that within itself, it's a great story. And hopefully the audience who doesn't like the choices that we made with their favorite character will still understand that, it's a good story. But yeah, I also think that having the roots in a previous game helps with a lot of the creative discussions, because we're like, okay, we did it this way in the last game. We could probably do it the same way this game, but what if we tweak it? What if we do this? But your game there was a lot of time between the two.
A lot of time.
And if I look at the amount of kind of just the things that are changed, there's a lot of change in there. Did you guys start with thinking that a lot of the stuff was going to be changed, or did that kind of evolve over time?
Yeah, obviously it was a lot of years, and there were moments of coming back to Alan Wake and thinking about the sequel. It just never, the time wasn't right.
Right.
But finally coming here, I do feel that more than any game that we have done in the Remedy history, when we built the vision for this, the final game is by far the closest to the initial vision. Because in many of the game projects, we have changed very critical big things along the way. But here, we had the beginning vision and the end game. There were, of course, okay, this mission goes away and things like that. But certain key things in it are in the final game.
Why do you think that happened this time?
I think partly because there was such a long time and kind of in the subconscious mind, thinking about it and already kind of building certain things.
So you had like a 10-year production?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I wish, but yeah. Yeah, but it felt different somehow, more kind of confident, and maybe there was also now we finally can do it, now we'll go all in.
Well, in technology, right? Like one of the things that we couldn't do in the first Spider-Man game was cut across the city, seamlessly.
Or for us to go into Mind Place, or go into Writer's Room.
Right. And now we can do a cut from one end of Manhattan to over into Queens. And
it's always tied to the technology, suddenly giving you new opportunities, and then it changes things.
Yeah. Sam, that was amazing. That was really fun.
A pleasure.
Yeah.
I want to keep going.
I know.
But I guess we are out of time.
Yeah. But let's do it again.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
I'll come to Finland.
Yes.
Yeah.
Welcome anytime.
Yeah.
Thank you, IGN.